Exit the council chambers. All right. I'm going to go ahead and call this September 17th, 2018 meeting of the Whitefish City Council to order. Thanks everyone for coming this evening. And I would like to ask my friend Marcia to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think Marcia and I sat together on the Lakeshore Protection Committee, was that back in 1998 through 2000 something, and she was always the best prepared and the most passionate about preserving that lake. So thanks for coming tonight, Marcia. And we'll start with a presentation. We have Andrew visiting with the Montana Renewable Energy Association, and he's here to present the City of Whitefish with the Soul Smart Award for 2018. Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmen and women, thank you so much for having me. My name is Andrew Valinas. I'm the Executive Director of the Montana Renewable Energy Association, and I really appreciate you inviting me to the meeting tonight to present this award. Just really quickly about the Montana Renewable Energy Association, we're a statewide nonprofit. We're an advocacy group that works towards expanding the use of renewable energy throughout the state. And so we do that on a statewide level. We do some policy and advocacy work in Helena, but we also do just general education and outreach work trying to help members of the public understand renewable energy, and if they want to install renewable energy, help them do that as well. And I want to give a special shout out and thank you to Karin Hilding, who was my primary point of contact on this project, who was incredibly fun to work with, and we got a lot done on this project, which was awesome. So Karin and I are actually partnering on a couple projects these days, and it's always been a pleasure to work with her. So thank you, Karin. What you have in front of you is just a brief handout about the project. The background behind this, the award being handed tonight is a Soul Smart Bronze designation for the city. And Soul Smart is a program led by the Solar Foundation and the National Renewable Energy Lab. It's actually funded by the U.S. Department of Energy's Solar Energy Technologies Office. So the idea behind this program is to help communities make it easier to go solar, and they do that by addressing what they're calling the soft costs. So if hard costs are things like panels and racking, the soft costs are things like permitting fees and planning and working through zoning issues and inspections and things like that. So they try to kind of help communities reduce red tape, streamline processes, and just make it easier in general. So if you sign up for the program as a community, you get technical assistance at no cost. That's from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory and the Solar Foundation. And you can also get help from a local Soul Smart advisor, which is the role that MREA was playing. So we applied to be a Soul Smart advisor. We worked with the program for 2 years and helped a number of communities around Montana become designated. Those communities included Whitefish, of course, also Helena, Missoula, and Missoula County. So there's only 4 in Montana, which is pretty special, and there's about 214 as of the last time I checked this morning, communities nationwide that have a designation, either bronze, silver, or gold. To get designated, you have to work through a number of milestone tasks similar to like a LEED certification for a building. So there are different categories, and then you complete tasks and milestones and can accrue points, and then you become designated. I have on this handout a number of the Whitefish accomplishments that were used to become designated. A couple that I thought were really that I just wanted to highlight was a 2-day workshop that we held last summer that staff attended online. It was a webinar conference specifically on permitting, zoning, and inspection for solar to kind of help staff understand just those processes and kind of the new considerations that communities are learning to work with as solar becomes more popular. And then another one, we actually held an event right here in the chambers this past winter, and I think more than 100 people turned out to learn about the process for going solar, which I thought was really exciting. We were able to come up and just talk to people about how it works, which was really great. On the next page, just a couple of photos for you. One of the things we find ourselves talking about a lot in Whitefish is the solar resource. I know it's cloudy here. We certainly get our fair share of cloudy days in Missoula as well. I think you guys actually do maybe better than we do. It's just showing that, Montana is a great place to go solar, including Whitefish. It's comparable to places like Florida, which is always surprising to a lot of people. And then the one at the top is just a photo of the map of current SolSmart designees that Whitefish is now a part of. So I'll keep it at that. I know there's plenty of meeting left to go for you all, and I think you've all been here for a while already. So I just want to say thank you again to Karin, to the council, to John. Thank you so much, and congratulations. So.
Thanks very much, Andrew. Here you are. Oh, thanks. There you go. Thank you. Thank you so much. Pleasure to meet you. Adam? Thanks again, Andrew. We'll move on to item number 4 of our agenda, which is communications from the public. This is time set aside for the public to comment on items that are on the agenda but not advertised as a public hearing, or anything you wish to bring to the attention of the council. Now would be your opportunity, and just your name and address when you approach the podium, please. Ma'am.
My name is Jean Jones. I have a residence at 255 Glenwood, and I'm here today because I'm so concerned about the quality of life on Monks Bay. I can't believe, I can understand the sharks coming in and wanting to make money. Whitefish is a great place to make money. Come in and not pay much attention to environment or the neighbors. What I can't understand is the city fathers and the people of Whitefish not protecting Whitefish, protecting the environment, protecting us from harassment. July, we had fireworks going from the 1st to the 15th in Monks Bay. And this weekend, we had a fireworks display out there that raised us right out of our beds. There was a wedding going on at the lodge. Well, I'm kind of old-fashioned, but I think wedding nights should be more private than that. I really do. And I would like to see the city fathers become more concerned, because the environment is going down. There's more paving, less trees, and pretty soon the things that have made Whitefish beautiful and a special place to be, and I'm 3rd generation here, they're not going to be here anymore. And I'd like to see that change.
Thank you, Jean, for your comments. Marcia.
Jean's a very hard act to follow. Good evening. Marcia Sheffels, 450 Parkway Drive, Whitefish. Probably like some others, I don't show up often at council meetings to thank you for all the work that you do, but when I have a complaint, I'm here. So first, I want to thank you for the work that you do on behalf of all of us. Now my complaint. I would love to just ramble on with all of you and chat, but I know your time is precious, as is everyone's. So here's my observation. On this past Saturday evening around 9:30, peace was definitely disturbed by a loud dynamite-like explosion, followed by an aerial display of fireworks booming in the closeness of Monks Bay. It alarmed, actually frightened my household, And we soon learned the same effect was had on neighbors and friends, near and far. When I called the police dispatcher, I was told that the city had granted the fireworks permit, and it was coinciding at the same time as a wedding at the Whitefish Lake Lodge. So, as Jean said, we have been here a long time. We pay a lot of money to live in Whitefish, and I am really disappointed that the city would allow such a disturbance for the enjoyment of a relative few, and right on the heels of a devastating fire season. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Marcia. Further comment tonight? Charlotte.
Hi, Charlotte Batten, 185 Reservoir Road, Whitefish. I'll keep this really brief. I just want to say enough with the fireworks, okay? If you can have a really nice, controlled, relatively quiet display on July 4th, yay, let's do it. Or say on the mountain when there's plenty of snow for New Year's. But in the city or anywhere near the city, you got to stop. No more permits to anybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlotte. Further public comment tonight? Further comment? Not seeing any. I will stay with the audience. Any volunteer board reports from the audience? Yes.
I'm Erin Harding, 420 Glenwood Road, and we're here for the noise pollution that we put up with day in and day out from the lodge. I've called the desk at the lodge. They tell me to call the police. It doesn't do any good. I got Bill Dial waiting for his shingles shot. I got him all by himself and said, you have got to do something. Not just fine them $500 and let it go at that, and then they do it anyway. It's nerve-wracking, and I think we pay a lot of taxes, and we should be listened to as much as the big guy with all the money. Thank you.
Thanks, Erin. Further public comment tonight or volunteer board reports from the audience? Not seeing any. How about the council? Richard.
We didn't have a quorum for the Bike Ped Committee, but there was some opportunity to have generalized discussions. I think it falls under the area of committees, however, and that is that I just wanted to share that I attended the state planning convention held at the lodge last week on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and there was no fireworks. But I had the honor of representing the city to welcome them on their first luncheon. And I wanted to give, though, a big shout out to Bailey Minnick because she did just such an outstanding job coordinating the conference. She was one of the co-coordinators, and thanks to the city for allowing her to have that time to do that task. But she just did a wonderful job. So thanks to Bailey.
Thanks, Richard. Further volunteer board reports from the council? Real briefly, in response to public comment, I normally don't respond to public comment, but I will this evening. Marcia, when I received your email this morning, I was obviously concerned, as was Richard and several of us for that matter. I did reach out to the Averils, and I indicated that there were complaints received from residents around Monks Bay and that it was disturbance of the peace. And they acknowledged that they were unaware. And I'm not apologizing on their behalf. I'm just letting you know that I did reach out. They indicated they were not aware that they had included sonic booms as part of the firework display, and they indicated, if I may quote, that it's probably the last time they'll ever approach the city for a fireworks special event permit again, if that's any consolation. So just wanted to let you know we did reach out to the Averill family, and I'll again reiterate to Sean and Brian your comments this evening. You're welcome. We'll move on to item 6, which is our consent agenda. Any changes or additions to the September 4th meeting minutes, or can I have a motion for approval? Ryan?
I would move to approve the minutes from the September 4th, 2018 meeting.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Melissa. I would like to acknowledge item 6B and just congratulate the confirmation of police officer Tessa Cowan, and certainly a big welcome aboard to the Whitefish Police Department. With that said, any further comments on the consent agenda? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion carries unanimously. Michelle? We'll move on to our one and only public hearing this evening, which will be ordinance 18-31, an ordinance rezoning approximately 2 acres of land located at 530 Edgewood Place in section 25, township 31 North, range 22 West in Whitefish, from WB1, which is our limited commercial district, to WR4, which is our high-density multifamily residential district, and adopting findings with respect to such rezone, and this will be on our first reading. Wendy.
Okay, good evening. So again, this is a request by Homeward to zone 530 Edgewood Place from B1, which is a neighborhood commercial, to WR4. The parcels are located, again, at 530 Edgewood Place and were the former site of a mobile home park. The purpose of the rezoning to WR4 is to facilitate development of a multifamily residential project. The Whitefish Housing Authority and Homeward are pursuing a low-income housing tax credit, and we'll learn in November if their project is funded. Residential development is not permitted or conditionally permitted in the WB1, so that was a non-conforming use when it was the mobile home park. In addition, this rezoning implements the Wisconsin Avenue Corridor Plan, which called this area as high-density residential from the limited commercial. Again, the property is about 2 acres. And we did notice adjacent landowners, place illegal in the pilot, and notify advisory agencies. And as of the writing of the report, we didn't receive any comments, but right before I was putting this packet together, we did get a letter from a concerned neighbor with the future development of the property and traffic. And again, those issues are really addressed at the time of development. We don't know what kind of development's going to happen at this time, but under the WB1, any whole host of commercial type uses could occur in that area. We reviewed the zoning changes according to the criteria in the zoning regulations, made in accordance with the growth policy. Again, this property is implementing the Wisconsin Avenue Corridor Plan, which you folks approved in April of this year. And as part of that process, you looked at the different types of land uses and decided that high-density residential was an appropriate use for this property. So rezoning this property is one of those implementation strategies of the corridor plan. This property was also identified in the plan as a key development area. The plan suggested it would be a good location for high-density residential because of its proximity to Wisconsin, the snow bus, the downtown, schools. The property is served by all public services and facilities, and those specific matters will be addressed at the time of development when some project comes forward. In addition, traffic would be addressed at the time of development. If the project exceeds 200 trips per day, the Public Works standards do require a TIS be submitted, and that'd be the time that we would look at the roads and the traffic circulation. And then again, through the Wisconsin Avenue Corridor, the character of the district was considered when they changed the land use designation to high density, so this is again implementing that plan. And let's see. So the planning board held a public hearing on August 16th. There were a couple of members of the public who spoke. They were concerned about the future development of the property and its impact on the neighborhood. The planning board voted unanimously to recommend approval of the project. And I would point out too that there's kind of 2 different tracks that are happening right now with the Housing Authority applying for the LIHTC tax credits. They're on their track, and then at some point, if they're successful, they'll come in for a city review, which could include conditional use permits or PUDs, and then architectural review and building permits. So there's going to be lots of time for the public to comment on the specifics of the project itself. If Whitefish Housing Authority is not successful, then any, again, future development, of course, would have to come back through the regular review process. Can I answer any questions for you?
Thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy on her staff report? Not seeing any. Thanks. We did advertise for a public hearing on what will be item 7A of our agenda, ordinance 18-31. Andrea, do you have anything to add to Wendy's staff report as the applicant? You don't have to.
No, I wanted to make sure I give you guys an update. Again, it's Heather McMillan, the Housing Development Director at Homeward, 1535 Liberty Lane in Missoula. But opportunity to give you guys an update that we heard loud and clear at the Planning Board that there was concern about traffic. We also were concerned about traffic. It is a busy intersection, and we know there'll be an impact. And so while normally we may wait for some of these costs to know in November if we have a tax credit award and a project moving forward, we've gone ahead and initiated that traffic study with Jacola and third parties. We're doing a preliminary site survey, traffic study, and starting the PUD process, even though we were waiting for this meeting and also an award of tax credits in November. We thought that the site development and the traffic impact was enough of a concern that we might as well start that ball rolling. And we should know more over the next few weeks and be ready to go full steam in November once we get an award. So while these are two independent tracks and not really related, you guys will eventually see a PUD application from us for 38 units of affordable housing on this site. And there'll be plenty of public process through that. But if you have any questions, I'm here to hopefully give answers.
Thanks, Heather. Any questions for Heather? Just real briefly, how do our prospects look, in your opinion?
I've been doing this for a lot of years, and it's like a poker match when we show up at the meeting and we all take our bets. But there's 8 applications submitted, and there's enough resources for most likely 5 applications. And I feel like Whitefish has, from lack of history of applications, there's a few in deep history. I think we're super competitive, but I might be a little biased. But I do think I appreciate the letters of support we've gotten from you, Mayor, and also council members and other community members from the chamber. That helps, and we'll make a progress update at that November meeting and showing this rezone and also forward progress on the traffic study and other components of the project. Shows that they like to see shovel ready, as opposed to other developers just sitting back waiting to find out. So we're being aggressive on this for a reason. Great. To be competitive. So
appreciate your efforts. I imagine you're here all week, right?
I am. We have a couple of meetings on Wednesday and Thursday. Just an opportunity to spend a beautiful week in the fall in Montana and Whitefish. No complaints. The dogs and partner are at the place we're staying right now. So great. All good.
Thanks, Heather. I appreciate it. Thank you. Just so the public's aware, we are holding 2 design charrette meetings for the snow lot property, the city-owned snow lot property. And those meetings will be downstairs in the lobby on Wednesday and Thursday evening, I believe, from 5:30 to 8 p.m. Great. So we'd love everyone to show up if you have the time. Any public comment tonight on this item? Any public testimony? I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to council for a motion. And I see Richard is ready.
I am indeed, and I move to approve ordinance 18-31, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Whitefish, rezoning approximately 2 acres of land located at 530 Edgewood Place to WR4, high-density multifamily residential district, and adopting findings with respect to such zone.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Fury. Any further discussion or comments on the motion? Andy.
Yeah, just one real quick comment. A letter received from David Johnson regarding traffic in the alleyway and use of that. Just want to let him know, and I'm sure he's watching tonight because it's so exciting to be here. But anyway, I just want to let him know that zone changes are not something that we condition, and it's not that we're not considering it. It's just not considered at this particular point in what we're doing, so.
Thanks, Andy. Further comments from the council? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion carries unanimously as well. Michelle. We'll move on to item 8, which is communications from our Public Works Director. We'll start with item A, which is the council's consideration of awarding a contract for the Flathead Avenue Extension Project. Greg.
Thank you very much. The Public Works staff has completed the right-of-way acquisition, design, and public bidding process for the Flathead Avenue Extension Project, which will create a new roadway between the Emergency Services Center and West 18th Street. Pardon me. This important link will create a safer connection to the city's public works shop and has been shown in past transportation planning documents as an important goal of the Public Works Department in order to connect the facility to city sewer. The proposed work involves the construction of approximately 600 linear feet of new roadway, the installation of a new water main to create a water main loop, as well as the installation of a new sanitary sewer. The city's worked with 3 individual property owners to acquire approximately 30,000 square feet of new right-of-way to create this section of Flathead Avenue. And attached to the report, there are several figures which will essentially show some of the design criteria, which includes a 24-foot paved roadway, which will serve as this direct connection from the ESC to the shop, providing a new safe two-way means of ingress-egress. The proposed schedule for the project, should the contract be awarded tonight, would be to begin construction as early as next week. Completion of the underground utilities this fall, which would also include the completion of a gravel roadway for winter use, and then final paving would take place next spring. So we opened bids a couple of weeks ago on August 31st. We received 5 bids, which ranged from 14.8% below engineer's estimate to about 1.5% above engineer's estimate, which was $439,767.50. The low bidder for the project was Sandry Construction of Big Fork, Montana. The total budget is for this fiscal year is $573,000, which is split between the street, water, and sewer budget. Estimated engineering on the project, which includes land acquisition and right-of-way platting, is $133,000. Should the project be awarded to Sandry Construction at the low bid of $374,836, estimated project will still come in below budget at about $550,000. So based on the results of the bidding process, the Public Works Department does recommend that Flathead Avenue construction be awarded to Sandry in the amount of $374,836.
Thanks very much, Craig. Any questions for our Public Works Director on this item? Richard?
No
Craig?
typos, please.
No, I know that you're not going to put in curb/gutter at this point. I'm wondering if maybe we shouldn't reconsider that, since it's going to have heavy truck traffic and I worry about the edges of the asphalt just beginning to ravel. And maybe we could use, just a thought, some of that savings, that 14% that we were under the engineer's estimate, to put in those curbs and gutters, or maybe that's more than 14%.
Yeah, it would probably come in a little more than that to do the concrete work. The intention with this project is that we will build, the entire road section in order to incorporate curb and gutter in the future. In other words, it'll actually be constructed to build curb, gutter, sidewalk, have the full set of street amenities. Our intention is that should any of those properties be developed in the future, we would have the developer bear those costs. But we've done the prep work through the tree removal, the excavation, the sub base, and the gravel to accommodate those in the future. So there will be a wide enough road base to bring gravel and have 2-foot shoulders, so I don't anticipate, even with the public works traffic and deliveries and whatnot coming in and out, that we'll have an issue with the road edge.
And there's sufficient width for a bike ped path?
In the future, there will be sufficient amenities for bike and pedestrian traffic.
Thanks.
Further questions for Craig? Or can I have a motion, please? Andy?
I would move that we award Sandry Construction the contract for construction of the Flathead Avenue Extension Project in an amount $374,836, not to exceed.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Melissa. Further comment on the motion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. And those opposed, like sign, and that carries unanimously as well. Michelle? We'll stay with Craig and move on to what will be Resolution 18-41, a resolution requesting distribution of bridge and road safety and accountability program funds. Craig.
Thank you very much. In May of 2017, House Bill 473 was signed into law, creating the Bridge and Road Safety and Accountability Act, or BARSA, as we will from now on refer to it. The law provides for a graduated increase in the motor fuel tax, stating that each year the greater of 35% or $9.8 million of tax revenues, gas tax revenues, is allocated to MDT, and the remainder, which is approximately $21 million by fiscal year 21, will be allocated to local governments. Local governments must match all distributions from BARSA funds with a minimum 5% local match. And BARSA funds can be used to pay for construction, reconstruction, maintenance, and repair of roads, alleys, and bridges that cities or towns are responsible for maintaining. Once a local government is ready to begin a BARSA project, they request distributions along with any eligible reserve funds from previous years. The city may place funds into a restricted account, which we've created that may be used for within 5 years of distribution. The Public Works Department would like to use BARSA funds for the reconstruction of Monaghan Road, I should say the future construction of Monaghan Road. This project is not quite ready for construction. We intend to work on that project as future development occurs, specifically the Trailview subdivision, and work reconstructing the city's wastewater treatment plant. So anyway, once the civil site work has been completed for Trailview, we'll do that first part of Monaghan and likely finish it in conjunction with the wastewater treatment plant. The fiscal year 2018 gas tax allocation for the city was $56,232.24. Although no expenditures are anticipated on Monaghan this fiscal year, a transfer of $10,212 was budgeted to cover our local match, so we are in compliance with BARSA. In addition, as a condition of approval for the Trailview subdivision, the developer must contribute 1/3 of the cost of the Monaghan Road project adjacent to that subdivision. So based on these factors, the Public Works Department does request that council pass the enclosed resolution requesting distribution of BARSA funds.
Thanks, Craig. Any questions for Craig on his staff report? Richard.
Along with this improvements on Vorman's, any chance that we can, here I come back again, on bike ped, safe, maybe even separated bike path along Vorman's to hopefully connect then around to JP, cross the Whitefish River, and connect then to the Roxand section of the trail?
Yeah, well, you know, we haven't talked about the section south on Monaghan. What we have talked about is the north section on Vorman. The trail will come through Trailview and connect directly to the Roxand Trail, which will then go past the wastewater treatment plant over the bridge and to the rest of the river path. We have talked at Bike Ped about having a connection from that northern park dedication that Trailview will be giving to the city to connect over to Creekwood. There hasn't been much conversation about continuing the path south on Monaghan to take the road all the way to the Roxand Trail. In the future, that could be a consideration.
I mean, the only reason I bring that up is I have seen some kids riding bikes on Vorman to and from school that live further south.
Okay.
So anyway, it's something to keep in mind.
Okay.
A quick question, Craig. How are the allocations determined at the state?
Hi, Dana. How you doing?
So,
I passed off some work to Craig to help me out with this.
well, it is Finn Pub, right?
Yeah, Fine Pub, yeah.
Fine Pub,
yeah.
yeah.
So the allocations are the same as our current gas tax that was before this. So it's a formula based on, quite honestly, I don't know the exact formula. But I know that they take into account, the size of your city.
Okay.
This is only 3 months of the new gas tax, so what you're gonna actually look forward to is about 3 times that in the future distribution. So we'll actually come forward again after March when we get the final figures from the state to request those funds as well. And so that's why the 10,212 is more than 5% of 56,000. It's because we're assuming we'll receive more.
Okay, thanks, Dana. Motion? Melissa?
I move to approve Resolution 18-41, requesting reservation of Bridge and Road Safety Accountability Program funds.
Thanks, Melissa. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Hennon. Further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that carries unanimously as well, Michelle. And we'll move on to item 8C, which I believe will be ordinance 18-32, an ordinance adding a new chapter, which will be chapter 17 to title 2 of Whitefish City Code to establish the Whitefish Climate Action Standing Committee, and this will be on a first reading.
This is also me. Well, I think as everyone's pretty well aware, the city of Whitefish has had a long-standing interest in building sustainable projects and reducing our carbon footprint. I believe the Soul Smart Award that we received this evening is just one more example of this. In keeping with this goal, Council has also adopted the Whitefish Climate Action Plan, which happened on April 16th, 2018, establishing a foundation for Whitefish to make the transition to clean energy and improve local resilience to the impact of climate change. Whitefish City Council goal for this year, Administrative Goal AD03, was adopted to create a Climate Action Plan Standing Committee by October of 2018. As stated in the attached ordinance, 5 citizen members will be appointed to the council and 4 staff representatives, which will be appointed by directors of Public Works, Fire, Planning, Parks, and Recreation. I should also mention that the Climate Smart Committee, Glacier Climate Smart, is interested in having a council member on the standing committee, which could also be discussed. While there's no direct financial requirement to establishing the Climate Action Standing Committee, the committee will be responsible for making various recommendations that may lead to future financial requirements. Council will have an opportunity to consider each of these on their merits at future meetings. So based on this, staff does respectfully recommend that council adopt the attached ordinance establishing the Whitefish Climate Action Standing Committee.
Thanks, Craig. Any questions for Craig on his staff report? Richard.
Actually, it's a question for Angie or Adam. Are we limited to 9 members on our, we are, I see that nod. All right. With that, then I have a comment. I think it's important to have a council member on that committee, and perhaps you could draw straws for staff members to have one of them be an ad hoc member, so that would free up 1 slot for a council member to be on that committee.
I would agree with that suggested change to the membership, if that's okay with staff.
Can we do that this evening, or do we have to have another discussion at the next council meeting?
No, I think we can just do it on second reading, Richard.
Okay.
So you want 1 council member and 1 of the members of staff to be an ad hoc. Is that correct?
Yes.
Great. Thanks, Richard. With that said, can I have a motion to that effect?
Certainly. I was going to give it to somebody else, but move to approve ordinance 18-32, an ordinance adding a new chapter 17 to title 2 of the Whitefish City Code to establish the Whitefish Climate Action Standing Committee and to change the composition to add 1 counselor and make 1 of the 4 staff as an ad hoc member.
Thank
on
you.
First reading.
Thank you, Richard. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilor Hennon. Further discussion? Thanks for bringing this back so quickly, staff. Appreciate it. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And those opposed, like sign, and that motion carries unanimously as well. Moving right along, we'll move on to item 9A. You have Adam's written report enclosed with the packet. Any questions for Adam? Not seeing any. Adam, anything additional to report on between September 12th and 17th? Or even today, for that matter?
Nothing at this time, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Adam. We'll move on to item 10, and we'll start tonight with communications from the city councilors, and we'll begin with Richard, if you're ready.
Sure. First, a shout out to the police department to say thanks for all of the officers, including Chief Dial, who helped patrol the marathon course on Sunday, providing for a safe event. Thank you very much. And secondly, fireworks. I have brought up on several occasions the need for a fireworks, to revise our fireworks ordinance. I think now is the time to bring up, consider, and hopefully pass a revised ordinance that would prohibit fireworks in the city of Whitefish other than the 4th of July's public display at City Beach. And that from the time that this ordinance were to come in, or ordinance to come into effect, fireworks would be prohibited. The cities of Kalispell and Columbia Falls have similar prohibitions. I think it's I'm going to say unfair, and that's not true. I think it's important to recognize that there are a lot of shift workers who need sleep. I think that there are doctors who need sleep when they're on call and have to go to emergency rooms. I think that there are veterans who suffer from PTSD. I think that there are elderly who find loud noises like this disturbing. I think that our pets don't need to be drugged to calm them during fireworks season. I think there are any number of reasons why we should prohibit fireworks in the city. We can't do anything about the county, but certainly we can do so in our city.
Thank you, Richard. You're very persuasive. I believe at the last meeting, did we not schedule this for a future work session, if I'm not mistaken?
We did, and
two meetings ago? Okay.
Yeah, we did that 2 meetings ago, but we don't have it scheduled yet. I just wanted to get ahead of this.
Sure.
New Year's is coming up, and it's the same thing when all the fireworks stands surround our city. And
Adam, have you looked at the next available slot for a work session?
Yes. They're awful crammed. I think we can probably slide it in at some point. I'm just trying to look out what I have ahead that was up on the screen a minute ago. And I know November is full of, that's all of our interviews, right, for the committees for November? Well, looking a ways out, possibly the first meeting of December. Typically, we cancel the second meeting of December.
Correct.
We could probably do something much earlier, like if we put a half hour, maybe at the beginning of next meetings, instead of, for evaluations for Angie and myself. But
is that the only item
we have
scheduled
an interview
for
that night?
We do have an interview? Okay. What time is the work session starting?
I imagine probably 5:30.
And it's probably too late to pull something together
That's
with
the
2
other thing
weeks'
about
notice.
October
Doesn't seem
1st
very
is it's
fair.
real quick. The stuff for October 15th kind of got put in there relatively recently based on some new information that we have from DEQ and things. And so those are really important right there.
Okay.
Possibly November 5th, and just kind of work the interviews around that.
I think it's
If we
important.
want to try to get something before the end of the year,
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, I'm willing to give up this New Year's explosions just so we can have time to really start to work on this.
Yeah,
But I would love to have it in place long before the 4th of July so that the public is aware of what the city's intentions are. I mean, I just, and I realize I'm going to take some heat for suggesting such a thing, but.
I don't think we can be pre-decisional necessarily,
No.
Richard. I mean, this still has to go through a public process, and, you know, those public comments should be weighed, you know, equally with our opinions before we jump to conclusions.
Oh,
decisions.
absolutely, yeah, and that's why I'm saying the work session, I think, would be, I want to have time rather than cram it in with a shoehorn.
Sure.
To do it thoughtfully.
Well, let's direct staff to attempt to get it on an agenda before the end of the year. If not, we'll just have to wait to 2019.
Okay. Also, I've just, staff kind of played out the process model that we have, and we couldn't get it passed by the end of the year anyway.
Right.
So,
That's fine.
Fair enough?
I want to keep moving it
Sure.
forward.
I appreciate that. Anything else, Richard?
I think that's it.
Okay, thanks. Andy?
Just a quick question for either Chief Dial or Chief Page. On the fireworks permit for the lodge, is that something that we signed off on, or is that simply a state permit?
Yeah, we signed off on it. We recommended that they do it earlier. I didn't want it to happen at all because I know we get a lot of complaints, but the ordinance is what the ordinance is, and I'll yield to Joe.
I guess then I'm going to express a little disappointment in us as a city, because if everyone recalls, I believe it was our first meeting in June, might have been our last meeting in May. During this very portion of our meeting, council comments, I brought up the fact that the lodge has a problem with weddings all summer long, and that we really need to do something about the noise for all of the affected neighbors in that bay. One of which I think Dave had suggested that he would write a letter to them saying that they should kind of tone it down a little bit, which they haven't done all summer long. And then two, we as a city signed off on a fireworks permit after we had expressed concern up here over noise and disturbance of everyone's peace and livelihood in Monk's Bay. So I just would hope that in the future, if we say something like that, there's either some action or some recognition or some acknowledgement that there is concern in the neighborhood, and we don't just say those things to hear our head rattle.
Thanks, Andy. Ryan?
Nothing.
Thank you, Ryan. Melissa?
No comments?
Thank you all. I've just got one reminder. You're the city manager and city attorney performance review forms are due at midnight today. I'll give you a week.
I'll get right on it.
So you can't go watch the rest of the football game. If you could have them by the end of the week, that would certainly help me compile the information for our next meeting, because these are meaningful and important to our city manager and our city attorney. And speaking of which, I just wanted to commend both of you. I know we always acknowledge the hard work that staff does, but I know Adam and Angie, you've done a lot of heavy lifting lately, and it's very much acknowledged and appreciated by myself and my fellow counselors. So thanks very much for all that you do for the city. In follow-up to our work session, I don't know if we're necessarily ready to provide direction back to city staff this evening, unless you feel otherwise. It just was a lot of information to digest, and personally, I know we covered, you know, the first 5 or 6 pages of the staff report, but you know, one thing we didn't hit on were the detailed policies and procedures, which is kind of where my head started spinning when I was reviewing it this weekend. I was hoping we could perhaps dive into that a little bit deeper during a work session. Just your thoughts on that, Adam?
I think the main concern I have is making sure we still follow the process. So anything that the work group does really needs to come back to the steering committee. Then the steering committee is the actual voting body, which would pass it on to the planning board and then up to the city council. That's why we wanted to get everyone together. Otherwise, we would have just gone back and forth numerous times every time somebody wanted something changed. So certainly we could have another group session to where at least we have all the decision makers in one spot at the same time. We can certainly do that again. And I know we were kind of thinking as staff that we would probably see that again in early November. I don't know how, well, we wouldn't be able to do it on the normal nights.
Right. When does IZ come back to the steering committee?
Well, it did tonight.
That was the meeting?
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
That, otherwise, they would have had us make changes, then we go back to the work group, we discuss it, come back to the steering committee.
Okay.
You know, I mean, and then also we go to the planning board. If they want changes, we come back as a work group, then go to the steering committee. And I mean, we'd be at this for 2 years just based on, you know, kind of the process of who we have to take it to and get it approved.
Right.
So.
I'm not sure how the others feel, but I personally would need more information and kind of a tutorial on that section of the document
just
before we
kind of
consider it
walking through it,
at
yep,
the council level, personally. I don't know how you all feel, but I think it's worthy of additional time and attention.
Yeah, I have several notes on the draft, my copy of the draft, and I'd like to, tonight wasn't the time really to discuss those. So
Sure.
I have some comments that I'd like to forward.
Okay. Once it leaves the steering committee, which apparently I guess it has, is the next step planning board?
Well, no, because I mean, it's still a work in progress, and this was just kind of an update.
Sure.
It's like, are we on the right track? Are there things that we need to slow down a little bit so that we can add further clarification? And it kind of seems like that's where we're at. So maybe we need to do, you know, maybe a special meeting where we get everyone together. It'd be outside of the usual first and third Mondays. But I mean, it's a very complicated,
Yeah, it is.
important thing. I mean, as we've been discussing in work groups, sometimes they go round and round, and it's amazing the discussions that we're having and the complexity that can come into this. And one of the things we've been trying to do is simplify a very complicated premise, and it's difficult to do. That's why we wanted to kind of do kind of a, all right, how are we doing? Are we on the right track? Are we going in the right direction? And so if we need to have a meeting where we need to offer some clarification and just have some discussion, it'd be great.
Yeah. Well, I think we need to keep the ball moving down the field, and if, I know time's precious for all of us, but if it warrants an additional meeting to stay on track to try to get this thing wrapped up by the end of the year, I'm all in favor of that. If you are, I know it would be an additional meeting, but how do you guys feel about that?
I'd be fine with that.
Okay.
I do have one additional comment.
Sure. Melissa, are you okay with
Yeah,
that?
totally.
Okay. Go ahead.
With regards to that draft plan, the comments on the very last page, with regards to the planning board, I think some of those comments are misdirected. As a comment that in that feedback, I think it's important to make clear that the planning board has a responsibility to the public and to the city, and that's established by statute. And I think that we need to make sure that that's understood.
Thanks, Richard. Lastly, I know I'm beating a drum, but garbage downtown. It's not getting any better. There's several cans where the receptacles are still, they don't close. You know, the whole panel still swings open, or it's open when I walk by on a Sunday. I know you've indicated we're doing everything we can, but, you know, I'll use an example from Ryan. He had his family in town this weekend from, you know, Bozeman, and they were, quite frankly, pretty shocked, right? Yeah. So I think it's something we really need to jump on. I don't know what the answer is, but let's continue to press that issue, Craig, if you don't mind. Anything further from staff tonight? Craig?
Quick reminder, before we meet again, our new parking ordinance will go into effect, well, actually, yeah. On that day. So you'll see in the next week or two, we have a whole bunch of signs going up talking about the new ordinance. There'll be a press release, Facebook post, all sorts of fun stuff. I believe our next utility bill will have some notes about it, although that'll be after it goes into effect. So if there are any questions, it's the alternate side parking. It goes into effect October 1st, and it's 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. So we'll be fielding the phones at Public Works. So direct people our way.
Thanks, Craig. By the way, Summers Avenue looks great. I drove it yesterday. Anything further from council? Thank you very much. We are adjourned.